What is good, everybody? Welcome to another crossover podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. If you're new to the show, this is where we take a deep dive on the 49ers opponent of the week with a very special guest. This week, of course, the Arizona Cardinals come to Levi's Stadium, and I am very pleased and privileged to be joined by Johnny Venerable of the PHNX podcast. What's up, Johnny?
Stats, good to see you, my guy. It's been quite the year thus far. Niners are doing well. Congratulations. Nice dub over the weekend. But yeah, Arizona Cardinal fans, it's like a ticking time bomb, for lack of a better term. Like, you sell hope for only so long. You're in year 2 of this new regime. You got to start winning games. But, we're enjoying it nonetheless.
So we're going to get to, obviously, 49ers Cardinals breakdown in a minute. But I have to ask you, because I just got to know, like, what is it like when your former head coach comes to town and absolutely puts it on you the way Cliff Kingsbury and the Commanders did to the Cardinals last week?
It was unthinkable. And I don't say that like tongue in cheek. Like, literally, not only was it laughably bad, egregious for the fans that were there, we hadn't seen that kind of performance by a Jonathan Gannon team through like 20 games, Rob. So it's like there's no reason to believe this would happen. I mean, that's a Washington team that I think is overachieving. They've beaten 3 teams with a single win apiece, including now the Cardinals. They barely beat the Giants. They lost badly to Tampa. Like, they're fine. They're going to be a nice watch this year. And congratulations to Jaden Daniels. He's on a tremendous start to his career. Good for him. But like, no excuses. And again, it puts everybody on the organization under a microscope at fault. They can't, I would imagine, get to this game Sunday, regardless of what happens, fast enough. I mean, Cliff's a good guy. I got to know him briefly while he was here. He was always nice to me. He's a good dude, but he just wasn't equipped to be a head coach. The Cardinals are actively paying him to go away, to not be their head coach. And then to come back to State Farm Stadium and to do that, good for him. I'm happy for him. I genuinely am. Like, I don't wish ill will toward anybody. But here's the biggest indictment of what we saw is the Commanders just started their rebuild. Their defense is not good. It's last in the NFL coming into that game. And the Arizona Cardinals, who had a full year plus ahead of Washington to get their you-know-what together, to have that kind of performance, like, you should have had the coaching advantage, the quarterback advantage, the skilled players, the defense. You were at home. Everything should have lined up. The Commanders had just played on a short week on Monday Night Football in Cincinnati, a big physical, emotional game. I mean, it is, and I said this on our pod, it's the worst loss for this franchise since they got railroaded by McVay's Rams in the postseason a couple of years ago en route to the Rams winning the Super Bowl. It's the worst loss since then. No doubt in my mind.
Well, as we sort of transition to this week, I would have thought if there was one game that Kyler was going to be up for and ready and just, totally emotionally invested in, it would be sticking it to his old coach. So that obviously did not happen last week. What is up with Kyler? Because he looked so good against the Rams, and then he looked so not good against the Commanders. Which Kyler are we going to see on Sunday?
I don't know. I wish I knew. And listen, like, I'm still very much pro Kyler Murray. Like, it's funny. Like, people are like, they need to get a quarterback. What are they? You think we're watching like Will Levis or something? Like, he's got 6 touchdowns to 1 interception. Like, he's a good player. And then against the Rams, he was maybe the best player in the NFL that day. That's what you can get. I think he's got inconsistencies he's working through. I think the play calling has not been good. I think it was Josh Norris, good follow on Twitter, put it out there like, Kyler Murray opening 15 plays to start this year, 5 touchdowns to 1 sack. The rest of the dropbacks, he's just got a single touchdown. Yeah, there it is. Like, I would look at that and say, we've got a coaching problem. Drew Petzing, the game plan as the game progresses, like in-game adjustments, you know how important those are. Stats like scripted looks good. How does it look the rest of the game? I think they have become too run happy. And usually you say the opposite. The Washington Commanders secondary is egregiously bad. And the Cardinals, for whatever reason, did not attack them vertically. And, it didn't help they didn't have Trey McBride. He should be back this weekend. But Kyler Murray, when you need him to rip it, like, you should be able to let loose shotgun and do that. So I know what they want to do. It's a version of the Shanahan offense from Drew Petzing in his time in Cleveland, with Kevin Stefanski. Like I understand it. It worked last year at times. They were, I think, third or fourth in rushing. It hasn't clicked yet. But again, I have confidence not to distract blame from Kyler Murray. He said this week, he said they got their you-know-what kicked. He's got to play better. The offense has the pieces. This defense, to me, is the story of this year, and it's 100% on this front office because it was avoidable. The Cardinals' defense was so bad last year, and they did very little to fix it, remedy it. I think they thought, we'll add some free agents, that you may or may not have heard of. We'll draft a couple guys, but the continuity with the coaching staff, like that should help. Again, more stats that we can draw to. The Cardinals, in their 3 losses, have the 3 worst defensive performances in the NFL. Like it is shocking to me. I love Jonathan Gannon. I think he's doing a tremendous job. I really do believe him. I'm not just shilling out. He's been on our show. We've met with him. He's super good to us. I believe in him as a head coach. That being said, they planted on free agency this year. They had $75 million, and they're preaching draft and develop. That's great. But I mean, if you're not around to see those draft picks flourish because you've been fired, like it's mute. So glad you're developing these players for the next regime, because I don't think that might be a little extreme, but it feels like that right now to Cardinal fans.
Let's drill down on this game specifically. And by the way, Fred Warner, let me just throw this in really quick, was effusive in his Kyler Murray praise. Here's Fred Warner from earlier this week.
He's the best that he's been, honestly. Everybody saw that huge game he had against the Rams with some of those throws that he was making. But, I think the thing that he's developed over time is the ability to really stay in the pocket and play the position at a really high level. He's always been phenomenal. At any moment he could play, at an MVP level, you know what I'm saying? So we got to make sure we're on top of it going into this game.
Do you agree with that?
I think Kyler Murray is on pace for a good year. To get this team to where they would like to be, he needs to be great, borderline elite. Like he can't have like Kirk Cousins numbers. I don't even know if he can have Baker Mayfield numbers. So again, people want to say I'm making excuses. No, I've seen the alternative. Like last year stats, like they were the worst team in the NFL. And then he came back with 8 games left. They had the hardest strength of schedule in the league. They won 3 of 8. They easily could have gone 4-4. They blew the finale against Seattle, which thankfully led to Marvin being the pick. But they missed 2 kicks in the final 2 minutes. Like he basically had them playing 500 football at the end of last year with a dismal roster. So like I am a believer. Like until you can find something better, like what do you think that this? Like trying to do the quarterback thing every offseason is exhausting. You need that continuity. I just feel like my problem with this franchise right now is they trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like, well, we need to rebuild the roster, but we also can't be aggressive because we're rebuilding through the draft. But you have a $50 million quarterback. Kyler Murray's timeline is let's win games now, right? And I think like doesn't mean you have to be crazy Steve Keim, have a bunch of dead money and make ridiculous signings, but you have to be more aggressive than what they've been. And I guarantee you, behind closed doors, they're kicking themselves for how they approached this offseason. They should have added more defensive line talent. They didn't need to go like sign Christian Wilkins, but I mean, like we pointed out, guys like Jonathan Grenard and Danielle Hunter, like the Cardinals had money to sign those players. And subsequently now they're putting too much pressure on rookies or second-year players that are unproven. Like you know this. You need to be able to get veterans to pass the baton to rookies. You can't just leave that cupboard bare. And that's what's happening right now with this team, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the offense.
All right, well, let's go to the offense. How is Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. going to attack this 49ers defense?
I would be shocked after last week. Kyler Murray ran 1 time for 3 yards, and it's
wow.
The media has toasted Drew Petzing. He's tried to defend it. He's going to have design runs. You can run on San Francisco. Like, this, it's happened this year. They don't have the defensive line play that they've had in years past. There's no Kinlaw now. There's no DeForest Buckner. They're going to try to run on San Francisco and work off the play action. Like James Conner, obviously, K1. I think we'll see end arounds to Greg Dortch and even to Marvin Harrison Jr. I think they're going to try to attack San Francisco up the middle. And then, like Marvin Harrison Jr. might be their best player right now. And that's not an indictment on the rest of the roster. It's just how good he is. Like he had that underwhelming performance against Buffalo, and people freaked out. And like now he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So like he got a ton of attention against Detroit. And obviously he did what he did against the Rams. He's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games, and they're all coming in the first quarter of the game. So I think vertical passing game, Trey McBride back this week, dump off seam routes, but the run with K1, his legs, I would be shocked. The start of the game, if he didn't have some kind of design run, does Kyler Murray in the first possession.
They asked Nick Bosa, how hard is it to sack Kyler Murray, especially because they just played Jacoby Brissett, who is a huge friggin' guy and is really hard to sack. And Bosa was like, it's not hard to sack Kyler, but the problem is you got to catch him first. Mm-hmm. And I always say he runs like a toddler that just stole his parents' phone. It's amazing to me to see the way that guy moves. Nobody else in the league moves like he does. I'm fascinated, since you mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr., to see the matchup with him and Deommodore Lenoir, number 2 for the 49ers. Lenoir is like, his stock is going to the moon this year at outside corner. They also move him to the slot at times. He has been crushing it so far this year. He's in a contract year.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated to see, like, can he handle a number 1 wide receiver talent like Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a great matchup. Marvin, to me, he's like, it's cliche. He doesn't play like Larry, but he is Larry Fitzgerald-esque, like on and off the field. He doesn't celebrate, super humble. He's almost too humble. Like when we see him and he's in the locker room, just keeps to himself, big smile on his face. Like he's everything that they needed. Like they are so fortunate that 3 quarterbacks went top 3. And they probably, stats, knowing what we know now, they probably would have taken Malik Neighbors or Joe Alt, who have also been fantastic. So they had good options. But when Drake May and Jaden Daniels helped themselves, the Cardinals were gifted a generational receiver prospect. And coincidentally, like they basically, after Kyler Murray or in between, they missed on so many first-round picks with Steve Keim. And it was damning. It's a big reason why the roster's in the state. It is the reason why the roster's in the state that it is now. I ripped on Monty Ossenford, the GM, for his lack of aggressiveness. Like you can't dispute the first 2 picks that the Cardinals have taken in his regime in the first round. Paris Johnson Jr., coincidentally or not, Ohio State left tackle, Marvin Harrison Jr., generational receiver. Those are 2 of their 5 best players. They're budding stars. The Cardinals, like I rip them. They're on the right track, but we want instant gratification, right? And we all took our medicine last year with this team. You've seen those lean years, right? And so they go to Buffalo week 1. They're up 17-3 on Buffalo, and the defense falls apart. Then they blow out the Rams. Then the following week, I don't know if this final score was as close as it indicated. They lost to Detroit by a touchdown, but they had a pick 6 called back that really would have put themselves in a position to win that game. Last weekend shook the confidence of this fan base in this rebuild. Let's hope the coaching staff can put it past them, because they do have a lot going for them. But this is a production-based business. Like, how many more years are they going to get just to run it back with this regime and to lose, double-digit games? Kyle Shanahan is an anomaly where they knew how special he was in San Francisco, but his quarterbacks kept going down. And then they mix in like a Super Bowl year in between, right? Like I remember those years where Garoppolo would go down and it was just conceding. The year Bosa went 2nd overall, that Niner team was good. They just had horrific quarterback play. Like the Cardinals are the opposite. We're like, yeah, they have some nice pieces, but the roster's not ready yet. But yet they have this quarterback that we're all super high on. It's fascinating, but stomach churning at the same time.
I can relate. Trust me. The lean years are not that long ago. Some 49er fans forget when they talk about firing Kyle Shanahan, but trust me. Oh, yeah. Pepper's Farm remembers, okay? On the flip side of the ball, how should the 49ers attack the Cardinals defense?
Oh, any way they want. I mean, right now it's up for grabs. And again, like I'm not putting it on the coaching staff, but it's hard for me because I mean, like, can you name a handful of players on this Cardinal defense? Can you name front 7 defenders? The casual fan can't, and I don't blame them. It has been neglect, football negligence defensively on their front 7. I like what they have in their secondary. Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, although they need to play better. Garrett Williams, second-year corner out of Syracuse, has been really good, but his status is up in the air this week. He's battling injury. Their front seven stats was awful last year, and they just kind of put their feet up this offseason, signed some cheaper free agents, and guess what? They're all underperforming, save for like a Mac Wilson. Justin Jones, they gave a big money contract to, not a big money, a mid-tier a guy from Chicago. He's hurt, out for the year. Darius Robinson, their second first-round pick, who I love. He's been on our show. He's going to be a good player. Not playing yet. Hurt his hamstring in August. Thankfully, it wasn't season-ending, but they're using their sweet time with him, and they should. But he's not available, right? Their edge rushers, they took a pass rusher named B.J. Ojulari out of LSU last year, tore his ACL in training camp. So, like, again, I'm all for playing young players and getting them time. But what happens when guys go down? You got to supplement, right? And I think fair or not, like Jonathan Gannon's defense is built on an overachieving back seven, the Kazir Whites of the world, who he made in Philadelphia, TJ Edwards once upon a time. He made Reed Blankenship a good safety for Philly. But what did they have up front? They flushed that position unit with top-tier free agent defensive linemen, high picks in the draft, and then they just went nuts, right? You remember, of course, remember that postseason game where Purdy got hurt. That was their calling card. Yeah. Hassan Reddick that they signed him from Carolina. The Cardinals, for whatever reason, they are just not equipping this coaching staff with the necessary players. So, like, back to your original question, the Cardinals' run defense for 2 years has been egregious. That, like, Jordan Mason, I would not be surprised. Again, maybe Shanahan gets cute. He wants to distribute. They got all their toys this week, minus McCaffrey. If they're smart, they would run Jordan Mason 30 plus times in this game. And they have given up 400 plus yards the last 2 weeks and 5 rushing touchdowns. And we remember those games. McCaffrey almost scored 6 touchdowns against this defense last year. So I would think, like, early downs, pound it up the middle, zone, counter, belly, whatever they want to do, until the Cardinals prove they can stop it. And shame on them because they neglected it.
I'm not so sure that the Niners will have all their toys this week because they play 2 NFC West games in 8 days because they have Seattle on Thursday next week. So Kyle is very conscious of that. And so I think he may sit Kittle this week because Kittle's been banged up with a rib injury. He may sit him this week so that he can go on Thursday in Seattle. I don't know. I don't know who's going to be there. We'll see. But I think Jordan Mason, he's not on the injury report. I think Jordan Mason is going to run wild, frankly.
Yes, correct.
So
go look at the backs that ran over Arizona for Washington. Not good players. Like, backups to Brian Robinson had multi-touchdown games. Like, and again, I also think, like, stopping the run is a mindset to some degree. And the Cardinals just don't have it right now, which is outside. I say it all the time, stats on our show. Outside of bad quarterback play, watching, like, poor run defense is so gross. I can't do it. And I watch it every week.
It's disheartening. It just, like, it demoralizes you on so many levels. Okay, do you have a final score prediction for us?
I think the Cardinals get their act together offensively to some degree. I think probably score anywhere between like 24 to 26 points. If they hope to be able to hang in this game, they have to score early and often, make San Francisco, at least in maybe Shanahan's mind, Purdy's mind, like one-dimensional. The only way the Cardinals win this game is they force Brock Purdy into bad turnovers. Like, even if the Niners win the turnover battle, like one, or they lose it 1-0, like, doesn't matter. And that's a reflection of the Cardinals and their roster. I think probably like something to the effect of like 34-26. I think the 49ers cover. Again, like, Cardinals before Jaden Daniels had that game against Cincinnati, Cardinals were projected to be a 5.5-point favorite against Cincinnati. And then they got their doors beat in. Wow. So, like, are they that team? Are they the Rams team? Are they somewhere in between? Probably. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter. But I don't expect the Cardinals to win. I think they made their bed. Last weekend was their game to get to 2-2, some breathing room. The back half of their schedule is, like, at least on the surface, is not that bad. There's a lot of New England, Carolina, Seattle mixed in. They knew the gauntlet that faced them. They faced what a lot of people now consider like 5-6 playoff teams in a row to start this year. They go to Green Bay after this, then they host the Chargers. They've played Detroit. They played Jaden Daniels now, who's the surprise of the NFL, and then they obviously played Josh Allen and Sean McVay. It's been tough, but that's the NFL. You can't cry about it. So Cardinals have made their bed. I expect them to lose again this weekend.
I think the Cardinals are going to be able to move the ball. The 49ers defense is hideous on third down. Take out what happened in New England because New England is a dumpster fire right now. On third and down, even third and long, it does not matter. This defense has been bad this
Yeah.
year. They were bad at it last year. So I expect Kyler to move the ball. James Conner always seems to play well, I feel like, against the 49ers. He's tough for them to bring down. So I think that the Arizona offense will be able to move the ball, but I don't think that defense is going to be able to stop Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is playing awesome right now. For my money,
Yeah.
he's throwing the ball deeper down the field. He has more 10-plus yard passes than anybody else in the league. He's got more yardage on those throws than anybody else by like 240 yards. He is protecting the ball also. He's using his legs more. He is absolutely taking his game to another level. So I think the Cardinals it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a fun game, but I just think the Niners offense is going to be rolling.
Yeah, I mean, just outside of McCaffrey, they have too many good players now that are back. I mean, the Cardinals needed a bunch of injuries, Debo to be out, and even with how well Juwan Jennings is playing, the Niners got beat by a Minnesota team with a I think a brilliant defensive mind in Brian Flores and an attacking. Look what they did in the offseason. They added Jonathan Grenard. They got a couple defensive linemen, Dallas Turner, and they just swarm defensively. The Cardinals, whatever that was, they do the opposite of that. And then, the LA Rams, that we all know that was a fluke loss. It was a painful loss, but they played not 10 out of 10 times. Like they played 10 times. I think the Niners win 9 times, given the state of the Rams rosters. That was a true fluke of how that game ended. Kudos to McVay and Stafford. But I think the Vikings loss was more indicative of how to beat this team. You got to get after Purdy, make him uncomfortable. You got to be physical. The Cardinals are not physical defensively. And I know it's got to pain. Gannon's been a good soldier. It's got to pain him because, again, he was a defensive savant. They had 70 sacks and 17 picks his last year in Philly. And they've been a disaster since he left. Everybody wants to talk about Shane Steichen. Gannon knows defense. And Nick Ross, they tried to keep him. They tried to make him their DC. He left. They have a personnel problem. And again, like you can scheme up all you want when you don't have the big guys up front pushing people around. It's tough. Makes things really difficult.
You are not going to find any more honest and objective coverage of the Arizona Cardinals anywhere than Johnny Venerable and the PHNX Cardinals podcast. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. If people want more of your work, where else can they find you?
Yeah, give me a follow on Twitter at Johnny Venerable. You can also follow us, PHNX_Cardinals. Again, myself, my co-host, Bo Brock. We do a daily Cards podcast this year. Shameless plug. Michael Wilson has been joining us every month. Mina Kimes has been joining us. Brian Baldinger. We need some good, tangible football to talk about. I don't want to be doom and gloom all the time, but at least in the short term. But yeah, appreciate you having me, Stats, and good luck this weekend.